It's Lee Halliday, and whether you watched the Super Bowl or not, you may have seen this Coinbase commercial floating around with the QR code that's floating across the screen and changing colors every time it hits an edge, changes direction, changes color. We're going to rebuild this today in React. Okay, so to get started, we have this home component that right now is just rendering out a container. It says box right now in just this black text. We are giving it some styles, but the styles are very minimal. It's basically just to fill the entire screen, 100% width, 100 VH height, and to set a background color. And what we're going to do is inside of this container, we're going to place a div, and this div will sort of encapsulate our moving QR code as it moves around the screen. And we are going to hard code some styles. So we're going to give it a top of 0 and a left of 0 to place it up in the top left corner. So within this div, this box, what we're going to do is put the QR code itself. Just like that, save it. So we're getting an error right now because we need to give it a few properties. So what a QR code is, it's just a representation, it's an encoding of some value. The value can be anything, typically it's a URL though, and I'm going to shamelessly point this QR code to my Next.js course website, Next Level Next.js. So with that saved, we have the QR code showing up. If you held a phone to this, it would take you to this website. We can set the background color. So what I'm going to do is I have this array of colors that will be cycling through as it hits an edge. And what we're going to do for now is just set it to the first one. We can also set the size of it, and I'm going to set it to size, which is 200 by 200 pixels. So here we have our purple QR code showing up. Next, we want to start it sort of sliding across the screen. We're going to do this in two steps. First, we're just going to get it moving. Then we're going to work on detecting when it hits an edge so we can change its direction. So we need some state. So we're going to set up sort of all of the state about this box, this QR code that's sliding, where it's located, what direction it's moving, what color it is, everything's going to go here. So set box is use state, and the default values, it's going to start on the first color. It's going to be at top 0, left 0, and then what direction it's moving from top to bottom. So we'll call this top dir. We'll set it to 1. 1 meaning top to bottom, -1 meaning bottom to top. So I guess you could do a Boolean as well if you wanted here. I'm just using a number. And then we'll do left dir, and we'll give this a 1 as well. So hasn't done anything yet because we're not using it. But what we're going to do is extract all of these values into variables. So color, top, left, top dir, left dir are equal to the box. And that will allow us to come down here and switch this to top and left. Should be the same right now. And we can change this color. Instead, we could set it to just color. Now, we're going to be incrementing this color. So it's going to go from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. What do you do when you get to 5? How do you figure out what color to display? Do you have to cycle that back to 0? Well, you can actually use modulos to sort of have it wrap around to use the remainder to figure out sort of what color to show. So all we got to do is we got to say modulos and then however many colors there are in this array. It remains the same right here because 0 divided by, how many is this? 5. There's still a remainder of 0. But when this is 1, you'll have a remainder of 1. So you can just sort of keep incrementing this number and it will keep cycling through them. Nice little trick anytime you want to cycle through the values of an array without if statements and all of that sort of stuff. So with this up and running, we are now going to basically start incrementing its value to have it slide across the screen. And for that, we're going to use useEffect. So we'll put a useEffect hook here with its arrow function. And what are the different dependencies to basically trigger this effect function to run? We're actually going to throw in all of the values. So color, top, left, top dir, left dir in here. So anytime any of these change, re-render the hook. So we'll save that, and then inside of here, what we need to do is basically have it incrementing the state. So we will do set box, and then what we're going to do is we're going to use this type of setting a state. So basically whatever the current value of the state here will be val. And what we're first going to do is copy all of the state, and then we're just going to change the things that we want to change. So what we're going to do is we're going to say the top will become top plus the top dir. Just like that. So remember, our top dir is a 1. So that will just, every time it renders, add 1 to top. And we'll do the same for left. So left will be left plus left dir. Just like that. And as soon as I save this, you're going to see this thing shoot across the screen from sort of diagonally to the bottom. It's not going to stop. It's just going to keep going forever. We will need to control the speed of this, and we'll set that up in a second. So save that. Boom, it's gone. Refresh. Boom, it's gone. So what we're going to do is we need to control sort of how often this thing should re-render. We don't want it to move as fast as React can possibly move. So you could use set timeout and set it to 30 milliseconds, and that will work. We'll try it at the start. So set timeout, the code to run every 30 milliseconds. Let's move this into here and save it. Refresh. Pretty good, right? It's now every 30 milliseconds. It's triggering a state update. It's moving from top to left. It's not as smooth as it could be, though. There's a built-in thing into the browser called request animation frame. And it's basically every time the browser's ready to re-render the screen. And we can use that instead, and it will provide a smoother animation. So we'll do window.request animation frame. You don't need a time for this. Save it, and it will still move from sort of top to bottom. But every time the browser's like able to render the next animation frame, it will update the state. So it provides a pretty smooth animation. Cool. So with this in place, what we want to do is we want to start like bouncing it off the edge. We want to detect when it hits the edge, cause it to change direction, change color as well. And to be able to know where the edge is, we need to know how wide this space is. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a reference to this div here. So we'll come up here and we'll call this the container. And then the container will be useRef. And then we need to come down here to the container and set the ref to be container. And I'm just going to add one thing quickly. It can cause problems if you try to access the reference when there isn't one. So what I'm going to do is just a quick if statement. So if there's no container.current reference, just return. There's no point in continuing on with this function. This would happen sort of the last time it runs after this component has unmounted. There's no longer a div to reference, so basically this check will stop it from happening. So now in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start checking to see if it hits the edge. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put into a variable how wide this screen is. So for that, we do container.current to access the div, and we can ask for its offset width. And for height, you may have guessed it, it's offset height. So now that we have this, what we can do is we can start checking to see basically when it hits the right of the screen. That will be the first bounce we check for. So we're going to start off checking when it's moving from left to right, and we can do that by putting in a check here that says if the left dir is equal to 1, meaning it's moving from left to right, and we can check and the current left position plus the size of the box, so the right side of the box, is that greater than or equal to the width of the screen? If that's the case, what we want to do is we want to update the box's values to have it change direction. So we can call setBox, we'll get the val, and we'll copy whatever is in there currently. And remember, we want to cycle the color, so we'll start with that. We'll say the color is equal to, we could say color plus 1. I guess better would be val.color plus 1, but color will work. And we need to change its left direction. So what we'll do is we'll say left dir is equal to left dir times minus 1. And we'll save that. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to add an else. So like this. And we can reload, and if things worked correctly, when it's moving left to right, it hits the edge, it bounces off. So when its left position plus the size of this box is greater than the width of the container, change its direction. And we change its direction by multiplying by minus 1. So you notice it started moving in the other direction, and that's because when we're down here in the else, what we're doing is we're saying left plus left dir. So if left dir is a minus 1, that will cause its left property to start to count down until it essentially hits 0. Then we need to have it go to the right again. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up here, we're going to wrap this here, and we're going to say or. So or if the left dir is equal to minus 1. And what we can do is we can just say the left, double and, is less than or equal to 0. So these two here, this will check when it's hit the right side. This will check when it's hit the left side. So just like that. It's going to be hard to see because by the time it hits the left side, it's way off the screen. So why don't we start detecting when it hits the bottom so that we can have it bounce up. So we're going to come here and we're going to say else if check for some things and then do some functionality. And it's very similar to what we did right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if the top dir is 1, so it's moving from top to bottom, and the top plus the size is greater than or equal to the height, or the top dir is going from bottom to top, so it's equal to minus 1, and the top is less than or equal to 0. So if those happen, what we want to do is the same as this, but instead of changing the left dir, we want to change the top dir. So we'll save that, refresh it here, and we should see it hit the right, bounce off, hit the bottom, bounce off, and we'll see, boom, it bounced, hits the left, bounces again, it's changing color every time. I think it's going to hit the corner, almost. Cool. So what we've done is we started off by rendering the QR code, then we just had it sort of sliding from the top left to the bottom right with this set box change here. And then we added 2 other detections for basically when it hits the left or the right edge, or when it hits the top or the bottom edge. And we had it change color by just incrementing because we're cycling through the colors here. And we've multiplied by minus 1, which will cause it to flip-flop. So if it's 1, it will become minus 1. If it's minus 1, it will become 1. And because as we move it, we're just adding in whatever value is. If it's a positive number, it starts moving left to right or top to bottom. If it's a minus number, it moves from right to left or bottom to top. And that's how you can recreate the Coinbase ad with your very own QR code, impress your friends and family. Hope you enjoyed the video. Take care. Bye.